We're delighted to have a chance to talk about our team today. Our focus will be how we bring new value to the system and why it has been successful. Senior colleagues will join me to briefly address those two questions for key components of our efforts. At least since the early 1990s, healthcare has been said to be undergoing significant change. True or not, it is now without question healthcare is in a fundamental transformation that has unleashed massive waves of change that are both threats and opportunities. Ever more motivated competitors and new capabilities, including pandemic-accelerated technologies, may well present existential threats to the traditional academic medical center model of care. At the same time, profound advances in genomics, computational power, and other areas of science, coupled with massive new pools of investment capital, have the potential to ameliorate or even cure formerly lethal diseases. All in all, a great time to be in healthcare. Whether we ride the crest or get swamped by the tsunami is up to us. Guided by the bold, active vision of our CEO, Dr. Ann Klebanski, a leader in every phase of care, our system has launched a first ever strategy to respond to those threats and capitalize on the opportunities. The 5 pillars target the most important issues in contemporary care. My office's mission, the core of one of those 5, in this middle there, investing in bold, transformative innovations, is to create value through the discoveries of the system's unrivaled research and clinical communities, as well as to act on innovation occurring in organizational situ, including among its administrative ranks. That new value improves care around the globe and brings much needed revenue to the system and its entities. Thinking about strategy, there are 5 principal means by which we create value: transacting, enhancing, co-developing, digital applications, and innovator enablement. We drive the immense intellectual assets wrought from conducting more than $2 billion a year of research and by delivering care to millions in dozens of modes and hundreds of locations. The 5 are focused on new technologies and solutions and the people who create them throughout our magnificent system. Not depicted is the tireless work of our team members who serve the innovation community by supporting their collaborations with industry through a range of mechanisms. They are a high volume unit responsible for more than 4,000 agreements per year and continuously implementing new electronic systems resting on cutting-edge analytics and applications. Their ability to map the dynamics of the business of academic research is an industry best practice and envied throughout the U.S. This afternoon, my colleagues will share a perspective on each of the 5 and why we've been successful in the past and are very enthusiastic about the future. Our optimism is born on a record of discovery and innovation that stretches back more than 2 centuries. It expresses itself in the current period in MGB-based medical products that literally benefit hundreds of millions of patients around the globe, including right here in Boston. Maybe you've seen the ads for Entyvio or Enbrel and their ability to counteract debilitating chronic diseases. The breadth and repeatability of our faculty's discoveries and their applications is unmatched anywhere in academia. In concluding this introduction, I want to recognize our entire outstanding team, 140 strong, the biggest and the best in the industry from my perspective. Last year, they stewarded nearly 1,000 new technologies and more than $180 million in revenue back to the system. If you work with any member of our team, please be sure to let us know how we're doing. We are grateful for all feedback, especially when we can accelerate success and learn from things that can be better in the future. My first colleague to join today is Roger Kitterman, who's been with our investment fund from its establishment in 2008. Roger has led it to be a top quartile fund and I believe the highest performing academically managed technology venture fund in the United States. Roger will share how, why, and what's coming regarding Mass General Brigham Ventures. Roger?
Thank you, Chris. So just a first slide with a little bit of context as to what's going on within the venture capital industry right now. As you can see, it's been really a record year for biotech investment in private companies from venture funds. And that really comes off, the lows of 2008, 2009 following the financial crisis and a really nice growth in the industry. If I was talking to you a year ago where we were just entering the pandemic and you had said, oh, it's probably going to be a record year and up significantly from last year, venture investing, I would have said, no, I don't think that's going to happen, but that is what happened. Driven in part by technologies related to the pandemic, but also by other technologies as well. It really did not skip a beat, and it's been a really banner year for investment in the venture field. If you can go to the next slide. So Mass General Brigham Ventures we're currently investing out of a $171 million fund. We've created 47 new companies since our inception. And what we do is we invest in the technologies that are developed at our hospitals, spin them into companies, and hopefully we make a return on investment from those companies. So we're positioned, as you saw from the slide before, it really is a historic bull market in biotech, where biotech is really now a core part of people's investment strategy as opposed to a fringe part of it. Because of the incredible research and the depth and breadth of the research done within our system, we have a unique opportunity to take these technologies and spin them into companies and really create an enormous amount of value that way. The COVID has not slowed the pace of innovation within Mass General Brigham. In fact, it's accelerated it. So if you look back, last spring, the number of invention disclosures that we were receiving was at more than a double the normal pace. And that was part by COVID related and part by the fact that when the labs were shut down, inventors and investigators had an opportunity to think about their inventions and file disclosures that they might not have otherwise had. So we invest with top-tier co-investors, some of the brand name venture funds that you may have heard of, and it's been a really successful ride so far. We have been able to generate over $4 billion of co-investment, the money that other people have put into these companies to really advance our technologies. And the returns have been in the top quartile, so the top 25% of venture capital returns, comparing us not just to other academic funds, not just comparing us to other life science funds, but actually comparing us to all venture funds. So it's gone very well so far based on the incredible science base that we have. At the moment, we're currently raising our next fund where we're going to target a $250 million fund to continue investing in our technologies. Next slide. So one example from our current fund is a company called Keros Therapeutics. So Keros came from technologies both at Mass General and at Brigham and Women's Hospital, and is developing technologies originally for treating a very rare disease called fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, which is a very it's a good thing. It's a very rare disease. It's a terrible disease where essentially muscle and bone, muscle and tendon turn into bone, and these kids don't live past their teenage years generally. We seeded the company together with a couple of other venture funds back in 2016, hired in a really first-class management team. They were able to take the technology, develop it further, and also expand it to other new indications such as anemia. The company went public back in April of last year, so it was the first company to go public during the pandemic, and has had a very successful reception in the public markets. Went public at about $16 a share, and it's currently trading plus or minus $60 a share. So our $5 million investment in Keros has returned 13 times our capital. But the other important thing here is that the company is in phase 2 clinical trials to develop these technologies and really bring them to our patients. Next slide. So this is the last slide, and this is our current portfolio, and it gives you a sense of how we think about it. So there's several dimensions to the slide. So you can see underneath each company is the indication that the company is going after. Along the bottom are the different types of modalities that we invest in. A lot of biologics, largely antibodies. Given that we are an academic institution, not surprising to see a lot of gene therapy and other new modalities being developed within the system. And then everything starts out, because it's academic research, in that discovery phase, and then moves up through preclinical into clinical, and eventually, hopefully, to the market. So everything is moving up, and it's moving up nicely. And then the third dimension here is the size of the bubble, which represents the market value of that company. So you've got something that's a very early seeded company like End Control, and then Keros, which has a market capitalization of over $1.5 billion.
Thank you, Roger. As we all say, it is truly a remarkable accomplishment what has been done through our venture arm. Rebecca Listfield brings deep scientific and intellectual property experience to her position leading our 36-person licensing team. Rebecca will provide insights into the elements of our organizational responsible for the greatest amount of revenue and innovator interaction. Rebecca?
Thanks, Chris. So on this slide, I'm going to talk about our proven model of success in out-licensing MGB innovations in order to commercialize products that benefit patients. So you'll see first in the left here that our annual licensing revenue far exceeds the combined licensing revenues of many of the top institutions in the Boston area. We've also showed unrivaled and repeatable success. So we have 13 licenses that have yielded over $10 million per license over the life of the license. We have more, with six licenses yielding over $100 million per license, which is quite remarkable. So how do we achieve this repeatable success? It all really starts with our strong scientific base. We're lucky to be in the epicenter of the biotech world here in Boston. We have strong relationships with over 700 inventors at MGB, and we review over 650 new invention disclosures per year. Additionally, we have a broadly capable team. We're organized to mirror the technology and the industry opportunities at MGB. We invest $12 million per year in IP, or intellectual property. We file over 2,000 patent applications per year, and we have over 600 issued patents per year as well. Under my leadership on the licensing team, we're focusing on a new strategy to grow revenue even further. And we have several funding mechanisms, one of which I'll talk about in a minute, which help to advance these innovations internally. So next slide, please. This is our current therapeutic pipeline, and this is really just to provide a sense for the magnitude of our potential current and future impact. So we have 14 new drugs going through the approval process now. 4 are already currently on the market at the top here. Already benefiting patients, and the role of my team is to add even further to this pipeline so that we'll have more coming through the approval process. So next slide, please. And we have many new tools to help add to the pipeline that I just showed. One that we're very excited about is the Translational Innovation Fund. This is a $50 million fund that's starting in fiscal year 22. It's going to invest in development of MGB innovations that have high commercial potential. We'll be committing up to $2 million per project to help create value internally. And we think this will have a huge impact. It's really coming online at an opportune time in the investment space, and we really think it's going to help add to that pipeline that I showed previously and really drive revenue even further.
That's great, Rebecca. Thank you. And that focus on deploying new technology and then drawing in new revenue is one that's shared throughout our team. Pat Fortune leads our market sectors. Effectively, he's responsible for technology strategy. Pat draws on decades of senior industry positions, including head of research at Baxter and C-suite appointments at BMS and Monsanto. Pat will describe the rationale and approach of the gene and cell therapy strategy we are developing, along with the 410 MGB gene and cell therapy investigators, as well as research and clinical leaders throughout the system, plus path-breaking companies and investors. GCT is a broad and fast-evolving field that has immeasurable promise for patients and our entire system. While first effort, the strategy sits in context with in context of many large-scale, highly successful industry alliances, which Pat will also mention.
Thanks, Chris. The promise of gene and cell therapy to offer not just new therapies, but to offer disease-modifying therapies that approach the definition of true cures has been around for the better part of 20 to 30 years. It's important that this promise, as realized, that this promise be realized, and it's especially important to the world at large because when you understand the genetic drivers of a disease and you understand it at the molecular level, it's possible to develop something that approaches a cure by targeting what those gene products either are or enhancing what those gene products are. But besides the world at large, this is important to the people that are a part of Mass General Brigham because MGB can play an outsized role in the that's rooted actually in its rich history in genomic medicine. MGB's combination of basic translational scientists and clinicians represent a capability that's going to allow discoveries to advance from basic science through the proof of concept in humans without ever leaving the four walls of the institution. This will result in major patient benefits, as you'd expect, in very severe diseases, as well as significant financial return to the institution. Now, while the promise of GCT has been around for a long time, as I mentioned earlier, there are leading indicators that point to a breakout in the near term. First, enabling but arcane tools like next-gen sequencing, CRISPR-Cas have now moved from the unusual tool in a laboratory to tools of routine use. Secondly, over the past 4 years, the FDA has approved 6 very novel, enduring therapies for a number of conditions, including childhood, adult leukemias, lymphomas, spinal muscular atrophy, and inherited retinopathies that can lead to blindness in children. There are currently roughly 1,500 GCT clinical trials going on in the U.S. and something like 2,600 globally. These indicate that these are on the path to be the next generation products coming out as this develops. Finally, the market is actually crystallizing and is expected to grow from $9 billion in 2021 to about $55 billion in 2027. Now, to ensure that MGB is in a position to leverage the opportunity it has, and it's been a part of developing to this point, we're currently developing a formal strategy to help MGB turn this promising future into a reality that actually we hope will exceed the promise, not just meet it. We can then track our promise based on the metrics that are defined in the plan, but then most importantly, we can all enjoy a front row seat watching MGB making the reality of gene and cell therapy happen. Next slide, Chris. In gene and cell therapy, I described a series of products that we expect will be developed inside the institution from basic science all the way through a demonstration of human proof of concept. There are a series of other technologies that come out of both our science and development labs, and in those, we're not positioned to necessarily develop the full scope of these ourselves, but we do this through an industry alliance program that addresses both therapeutic companies, that is drug companies, diagnostics companies, as well as medical device companies. This program is run by Dr. Seema Basu, and she oversees each one of these alliances that are not passive. They are very active development and economically attractive programs. The individual collaborations, as I said, are focused around drugs and devices, and the individual partners, devices in the case of companies like Canon and Boston Scientific, these are multi-year programs with a range in size that go from 1 million at least to start to currently at least 1 or 2 of these that approach or exceed $30 million in total over the collaboration.
Great, thanks, Pat. And as you said, Seema leads our alliance effort with great skill and passion. As an example, Bayer has, I think, 68 alliances around the globe. We say to them, and they say back to us, we want ours to be the first among all those. And I think it's, given our tools, it's realistic. And in terms of gene and cell therapy, hard to overstate the capability in the system. When the history books are written, threads will run back to each of the 4 academic centers in terms of capability in the key categories of GCT. Being successful in provider business development requires an industry aptitude and exceptional organizational resourcefulness. Trung Do has brought that and so much more over nearly 20 years with Mass General Brigham. Throughout that time, digital has become ever more ubiquitous and central to system viability. The subtleties that confound competitors come naturally to Trung and enable record-breaking outcomes, of which he's going to share a little bit.
Thanks, Chris. Obviously, everyone knows digital health. It touches all of us in many different ways. But let me set some context before I go into an example here. So digital health is increasingly becoming more of a viability and strategic imperative for us. COVID has certainly accelerated the acceptance and adoption of digital health and virtual care models, and it has reinforced for us that we need to evolve and adapt to new care models, and I would argue new business models as well. The market is actually rewarding a lot of these companies that are offering compelling digital experiences for our patients and clinicians to the tune of $14 billion of venture funding flowing into these companies, and with a projected in 2026, a total addressable market of $650 billion. Let me repeat, $650 billion. This is something we should care about because we do have a privileged position in shaping the strategy and obviously creating that value and capturing that value for our system. We've had a long history and rich history here at MGB of successful innovation in IS digital health, both in research and clinical care. We have orchestrated significant commercial outcomes from these innovations over the past decade. However, we have historically not coordinated and aligned around a unified system strategy to knit all these assets and capabilities together. Until 3 years ago, under the leadership of Dr. Ann Kolbansky and Greg Meyer, my team was asked to lead in orchestration with the broader digital leaders here at MGB, a system strategy and a plan to develop the infrastructure and requirements to be a world-class digital health organization. The outcome of that process was a board-approved $500 million investment to enhance our infrastructure. In 2019, we launched what is known today as the Enterprise Data and Digital Health, EDDH. And from a business development perspective, the EDDH well positions us to create value and deliver significant commercial outcomes through large-scale collaborations, co-development relationships with industry, including direct investments in startup companies through our new AI Digital Innovation Fund. Next slide, please, Chris. So as you all know, we work in a very complex multi-stakeholder environment that requires the ability to navigate and coordinate efforts across the entire system to identify and create high-value commercial opportunities. A lot of this work is done by my BD team in orchestrating desired strategic and commercial outcomes for the organization. One specific example of that is the Mass General Brigham Center for Clinical Data Science. The center was established in 2016 under the leadership of Dr. Keith Dreyer, our Chief Data Science Officer, and in collaboration with my team and with the stewardship and luminary guidance from Dr. Jim Brink and Giles Boland, the chairs of MGH and Brigham Radiology, and their seed investments, we were able to leverage that into now $130 million of a committed industry funding from large prominent partners like GE Healthcare, NVIDIA, Nuance, Fuji, and many others to be announced. And at that time, we recognized an important role that MGB could play in shaping the strategy and adoption of clinical AI. And for us, the measure here is patient and clinician benefit. And we today have demonstrated the ability to scale our model, decrease the amount of time and costs that it requires to create each one of these models, which we believe will bring AI solutions to the market faster to the benefit of our patients and clinicians.
Great, thanks, Trung. And I just want to encourage everyone listening today to sign up for Trung's course at Harvard Medical School. You have a chance to learn a lot a lot more about the great things that are happening. So just the last few slides here. Growing the size and the skills of the MGB innovation community is one of the key modes with which we increase the volume and value of system assets. The priority has been to enable new innovators in multiple underrepresented categories: clinicians, early career, females, and underrepresented minorities. There is much room for growth in each of those categories. Today, for example, males outnumber females 4-to-1 in all key categories of invention and application. Imagine how many patient lives would be improved if there were parity in gender, but also by field, career stage, and race. More to come on that. We have a lot going on. Innovators, especially first-time ones, need support to make their journey more efficient and to increase the potential that they will have actionable discoveries. We approach this service function from many directions: workshops, interviews, case studies, electronic engagement, and much more. In all this, we live by a continuous improvement mandate. A recent example is the Innovator's Commercialization Guide, practical, clearly written document to aid throughout the journey, from before discovery to marketable products. On every page, it answers the questions: who do I talk to, and where can I get help? Finally, the World Medical Innovation Forum is a foundational element of our efforts to drive more innovation. It brings CEOs, top executives, investors, and entrepreneurs into direct dialogue with our faculty. The focus this year and next year is gene and cell therapy, strategy, investment trends, breakthrough therapies, and future industry direction. I want to encourage everyone to register for it. This is a business development meeting with a chance to learn a lot about an exceptionally important field. VIP registration is free for MGB employees and allows access to restricted portions of the agenda, such as live speaker exchanges. So in conclusion, on behalf of our entire team, thanks so much for sharing this half hour with us. We are each grateful to be part of a community that does so much good for patients today and will long into the future. Thanks again. Rose, all yours.